Hey everyone, it's your cartoonist pal Stan here for another episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon. This is a show that I put together because 2024 is the 50th anniversary of the game Dungeons and Dragons, and that's been a big part of my life and career. And so I wanted to do this to kind of celebrate it and to get a chance to talk to some of the people that, well, a lot of them I've met before. Hopefully, I'm getting some people in over the next few weeks that I haven't talked to a lot. Today, we've got a couple of friends of mine who are joining us. We'll get to that in a second. I'll finish my first thought, though. So, it's to celebrate the 50th anniversary with conversations about the game and its history. And while that's going on, I will be doing a cartoon homage to a classic piece of D&D art. Each year, we move the timeline 1 year forward. This year, we're at 1981, and the book I'm going to be doing an homage to is the Fiend Folio, which came out in 1981. Makes sense. And I'm going to be doing the cover, which is that great picture of a Githyanki that kind of sticks in everyone's minds. Before we get started this week, I want to deal with a little bit of sad news. A couple of weeks ago, I had as my guest James M. Ward. I hope you got to see that show. If not, it's still available in the over on Facebook. But Jim had a heart attack last Friday. Sadly, he was hospitalized and passed away on Monday of this week. So I just want to take a second to remember him. If you watch the show, you'll see how far he went back in D&D's history and how important a role he was. And my guest today, we all worked with and for him, and we're very sad to see him go. So, moment of silence. While we're doing that, I also want to remember another great person from the D&D history who I'd hoped to have as a guest on the show. Unfortunately, she passed away earlier this year. That is Janelle Jakeways, who most people will remember her for the covers she did for D&D, but she also did some really very important early design on the game, on Judges Guild products and other adventures. And she worked in the computer gaming industry, was a very important person in the development of games from where it was in the early 70s to where it is today. And again, they had another terrible loss. I was looking forward to seeing both of them at some point this year at a convention. And yeah, just sad as we're starting to lose our history. So look them up online if you don't know much about them. They certainly deserve it, and you will be edified by what you learn. So my guests today are Richard Baker and Dale Donovan. I'm just going to call him Rich because that's all I ever call him. And I'll call Dale because what else are you going to call him? They are, you know what? I'm not even going to do it. I'm going to bring them on, let them just tell you who the heck they are, because I will just say something that makes no sense. So here we go. Rich and Dale, thank you for joining me this week.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for the invitation. You can call me anything you want, Stan.
I just won't call you late for dinner.
Exactly.
So that Rich, give us just a quick kind of TV guide. Who is Rich Baker and what's he doing here on my computer screen?
Sure. I am a game designer and writer who worked in Dungeons and Dragons in the game's second, third, fourth, and fifth editions. I am also the author of, about a dozen Forgotten Realms novels.
Yeah. Great. Dale, how about you?
Well, I've written no novels.
You've read a lot, though.
But I started at TSR in 1989, working for Roger E. Moore on the staff of Dragon Magazine. Best job I ever had. And over the 12 or so years that I worked for the company full time, I evolved from magazine editor to game designer, editor, to working with the late great Kim Mohan as one of the managing editors out in Seattle.
Yeah.
And since then, doing some freelancing, not so much anymore these days, but it's a hobby. You know, the games are a hobby, and working on them is a hobby.
Right.
So that's where I am now.
And that's one of the things we all kind of have in common. I don't know pretty much anyone that works in games that it isn't also their hobby. I do it for work and you do it for fun. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes people who don't do that don't understand that really is there's a line there, right? There's a difference between that even while you're doing it, that you kind of they leak over, but there is a difference between what you're doing for your hobby and what you're doing for your work.
Yeah. I had been working at Dragon for not very long when Roger Moore said something to me that I didn't understand at the time. He said, "Yeah, Dale, after you work here for a little while, you'll develop a real passion for golf." And that just kind of struck me odd. But of course, then he went on to explain, well, you see, what was your hobby is now your job. So
Yeah.
the way the human brain works is now your brain is going to need a new hobby. And to some degree, that's true because, I worked on D&D and all of TSR's properties, you know, for as long as I did, but I never stopped playing games. I just started
Right.
playing a lot of other games, especially once I was exposed to the atmosphere at TSR, where you had so many people with so many different perspectives on games and gaming that it was great to be able to continue that hobby in a new way.
Yeah. No, I think that one of the things that was true even back in the day is that when you're working on D&D, your hobby games are very often not Dungeons and Dragons. You're not playing
Mhm.
that. And I mean, I get what Roger was saying back in the 80s and 90s. You needed to get out of games, right? So it became golf or some other sport. Nowadays, though, it's computer games. It's other kinds of games more often than not. Speaking of which,
Mhm.
Rich, you're now working in the computer game industry, right?
I am. I work for ZeniMax Online Studios. I am a writer on the Elder Scrolls Online game. And in fact, I've been there, gosh, 4 years ago, as of the beginning of the 4 years now since the beginning of the month. And so if you've played Elder Scrolls Online anytime in the last couple of years, any of our new releases, I've been doing mostly work in the main story of our different chapters and DLCs. So you've probably played something that I've touched at some point.
All right.
So you can blame Rich for whatever you don't like.
But
I will say, I mean, it's yeah, a lot of hands do touch the work, so I can't claim credit for all of it. Which also means I can't. I have an easy way of saying it wasn't necessarily always my fault.
a lot of blame to
Yeah.
go around. Got
Yes.
a
Yeah.
hello from the Lemons. Lemon says it there. All the Lemons are on the couch checking in. Glad to see you guys here. Always good to see you. And everyone else who's watching, I see we've got a bunch of people watching on different platforms. Thank you. Please join in the chat if you can. We will try to, if you have any questions, put a big Q at the start of them so we notice. Otherwise, we'll just kind of do a little chatting the way we do. Um, so we started talking about there that we come to this from hobby. So uh, how did you guys get into gaming to begin with? What was it that brought you to D&D?
Go ahead, Rich.
Okay.
I'm gonna switch over here and start doing some drawing.
Sure. Uh, so let me see. I guess I was probably in about seventh grade when the D&D Monster Manual came out. And I remember walking into a local hobby store, um, just one couple blocks from my house, and saw a bunch of kids I knew from school who were playing this game that involved, graph paper and dice, and there was a monster manual on the table. And of course, I pick up the monster manual and look at it, and it's the old first edition monster manual. It's, by the standards of today's art and presentation, right? It's not a sophisticated looking book at all. But man, that book just invites you to wonder about it, right? If you've never seen anything like it, right? There's a dragon, there's a centaur, there's a horrible stalactite monster. You're like, what is that thing? Yeah, I want to
Right.
know. I'm curious, right? And I just discovered fantasy really a year or two before. I've been reading everything I could find in my local library. Obviously, instantly kind of captivated, and got into D&D. I was actually trying to put a year on it. I'm pretty sure it would have been about 1979. I had the old D&D blue box, and I was playing with my friends. Funny story. We kind of divined from the rules that it sounded like there was supposed to be a lot of characters in a party. So we said, okay, you're one player, but make up a 6 character party because you're supposed to have like 6 guys to play the game. So we, characters, like a team of 6 was kind of your piece in the game. And we'd have a couple of players playing in the same dungeon at the same time. So it'd be a DM and my buddy John and myself all playing, and it'd be like, if my party is 6 ran into your party is 6, attack, fight, right? And of
Yeah.
course, it'd be like, oh, my guys are like 6th or 7th level because we survived, and your guys are like first levels because your last party just got wiped. Just slaughter them. They're first level. Try them before you. Hear the lamentations of the women, right? Just all kinds of crazy shenanigans. But from there, obviously, we played through high school, played through college, went off and spent a couple of years of active duty in the Navy. And when I was getting out of the Navy, I was sending resumes out to everybody, all sorts of things like, what am I going to do after my active service? And literally sent a resume to TSR for the pure hell of it, because it's like,
Yeah.
I got a stamp. Might as well send out one more. And wouldn't you know it, that was the thing I wound up doing. They must have seen something in the resume they liked. I got the gig, and they brought me on board, and I started in the TSR in October of '91,
Hmm.
and had a long run there. I feel like I just hogged the spotlight for a moment, so I'll
That's,
defer to Dale and let him tell the story.
all right. Dale, what's your origin story?
My origin story does begin in the year 1981. So, unlike someone, I'm being thematically appropriate.
That's all right. We cut everyone a little slack. That's a you know what, I was really happy with this as a theme, and then I realized some people are taking it very seriously.
Yes, I am. I'm taking it very seriously.
Well, you're an editor who can. That's your job.
Yes. Yeah, to spoil everyone's fun. Now, the way I got started was I was subscribing to a teen pop culture magazine called Dynamite. It
Hmm.
would have articles on, the band Cheap Trick and this TV show and this, singer and, whatever. And an issue came, and inside it was an article on this new kind of game called Dungeons and Dragons. I had been a comic book reader and loving Star Trek and all the other bad sci-fi and fantasy that I could get my hands on back then. And once I read that article, I knew this was the game for me. And I had a birthday coming up, so I asked for it for my birthday. And one last note on the Dynamite magazine: that issue disappeared long ago, but of course with the internet, I've gone back and looked up, well, what issue was this in? And I don't remember the issue number right now, but and perhaps a very weird bit of destiny. Um, the issue of the magazine that had the D&D article in it, the cover story was on the Buck Rogers TV show. Kid you not, Gil Gerard and Aaron Gray were on the cover, because it was this new cool science fiction show.
And for those who may not know, that's ironic because Buck Rogers, the property, was owned by the same family who was running TSR at the time, and so there's a lot of Buck Rogers that came out of TSR in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. So I got the Moldvay box set for my birthday that year, and read that rule book and read it and read it and read it and read it. Subscribed to magazine, subscribed to Dragon, joined the RPGA, read everything I could get my hands on, and eventually got the guys just here in the neighborhood to play some games with me. And then when I got into high school, I became better friends with some guys that I had known in junior high, but we became much closer in high school and discovered, they play D&D too. So for my high school years, especially, it was D&D multiple times a week. And so that was a lot of fun. Played on and off when I went to college. And my getting hired story is actually very similar to Rich's. I had graduated in 1988 with a degree in communications along with 3 million other people, and had been sending out resumes for months. Nobody's even contacting me. So one night I'm sitting there at the electric typewriter typing up cover letters, and I sent one off to TSR and I sent one off to Roger E. Moore at Dragon Magazine. They can't say no any harder than everybody else has been.
Yeah. May as well send it to something you love, right?
Right, exactly. I felt better for having done it. It relieved the drudgery for a day or two. Never expected to hear anything.
So when you guys were playing, what were your early games like? And Rich, you were saying that everyone had a whole bunch of characters. It really was a big troop, which sounds a lot like what we find out Gary was doing when he was running. It was very large groups, and people may not have had multiple.
Yeah, I mean, we were definitely like, yeah. Well, I mean, we don't know how the hell you get this many players in a party unless somebody's running like 4 or 5 guys at once. But it seems to be important because that's all the examples I put in the book. So I guess we do that. But we sorted it out. We eventually got ourselves down to 2 characters apiece, and the big game that we kind of ran that I remember best, like kind of through my high school years, is we ran the Giant series.
Mm.
Hill Giants, Frost Giants, Fire Giants, and we played the heck out of that. And really that was me and my buddies Tom, the other Tom, and Bud. We had some epic adventures. We used to play with the speaking of Dragon, we played with the critical hit rules that were in that one Dragon magazine. That would be like roll the percentile dice and just see what gets chopped off, and so the games are just horrifically bloody. We were just I remember one particular encounter was a tough fight where my dwarf fighter, who was basically tough as nails because he had a high con and everything, managed to lose one arm and both legs to critical hits in the same fight.
Wow.
So I guess he was kind of crawling around on his stump, still trying to whack at people with his battle axe in his one good hand. It was like, maybe we weren't using that rule right or something, because man, it feels like I get limbs chopped off all the time in this game.
Hey, it sounds like you were about ready for the fantasy version of Steve Austin, too. Magic legs and a magic bionic arm.
Right.
Oh, I got to ask you a question, Stan. Actually, this is something that's been bugging me for 40 years.
Uh-oh.
What is going on with this Yankee dude's elbows?
I don't know. I was just trying to figure out. I actually never paid attention to it until 3 minutes ago. And I'm like, what? He's got like cloves of garlic on his elbows.
I mean, are there like super knobby elbows that stick out that far, and or
I
because it's
don't
the
know.
same
Dale,
color
do
as
you
his
know?
skin?
I have no idea. I don't know.
I'm gonna treat them like something that he's like an elbow pad in my
A
drawing.
bangle of some sort. Okay, sure.
If people do
Not like
know,
elbow scrotum
leave
or
a
something. Okay.
comment. But I mean, on this one, on his right arm, it looks like it could be a super knobby elbow because
Yeah.
of the way it's bent. But here on this left arm, if that
Oh
was a
yeah, yeah,
knobby elbow, it would not be sticking out like that.
yeah,
And I don't know.
yeah. All right. I was hoping you knew. You're drawing them. I
Yeah,
figured you must know.
it's well, very often when you're doing art for games or for any uh, corporate gig, and they send you reference, you don't ask why. You just say, okay, that's how it is, and you wind up with weird things. It reminds me of the this is something that gets quoted in business classes a lot of things like why you cook things certain ways, and the story of the pot roast where you cut the ends off of the pot roast. You heard that? The short version of that is some uh, someone gets married and the spouse wants to make uh, pot roast like their mother made, and they ask, how do you do it? They said, well, first you cut the ends off and put it in. It's like, doesn't that mean the juice runs all over the place? You have to do it that way. And so they do it, and a year later they're all getting together, and she gets to meet the grandmother for the first time, and she asks, which apparently the mother never asked, the grandmother, why do you cut the ends off the pot roast? And the grandmother says, well, because in my apartment the oven is too small. I can't fit the whole thing in. I didn't have a large enough pan. The pan wouldn't fit in. So the pan that does fit in the oven, the pot roast didn't fit in. So we cut the ends so it fits in. So you wind up with finding out why you do things. Is you say it's important. Why are these elbows like that? I don't know. I'm just gonna make them like that. Anyway, how about you, Dale? What were your early games like? Is there any? This is a question that we all generally are terrified. But do you have a favorite character you want to tell us? You want to tell me about your character?
Well, I might get to that in a bit. When I started playing off that Moldvay Basic set, I was the only one who had the rules,
Mm,
and while I browbeat my neighborhood friends into playing, they, at least at the beginning, none of them had the rules or anything. So since I was the only one who had the rules, and the Adventure B2 Keep Under Borderlands that came in the box, I was the DM.
right.
So I had never been a player, but I was the default DM because I was the one who wanted to play this game. Now, fortunately, I had read and read and read the rules, and I had quite a few issues of Dragon Magazine under my belt by that time, having learned about GMing advice and things to do and things not to do. I certainly still did a lot of things wrong, but that first D&D campaign for my buddies here in the neighborhood, I was the DM. As a couple of us got into gaming even deeper, we explored other TSR games, Gamma World, Top Secret,
Mm,
Star Frontiers, and it really wasn't until I started at TSR later when I discovered the larger universe of RPGs and games in general. In fact, it was one of the first editorials Roger let me write for the magazine, was me saying how I grew up playing just TSR games. And now that I work at TSR, I'm discovering all these other games that all these other gamers have played and enjoyed. And that actually ties into what we were talking about with new hobbies before, because, now there's this Call of Cthulhu that I'm just hearing about, and Traveler, and Star Wars, and RuneQuest, and so many, and the Judges Guild stuff, and And so that was wonderful. Particular character, not really. How about you, Rich?
um, this is cheating a little bit, but I'll say that the character that I think I had about the most fun playing was actually from a playtest we ran at Wizards of the Coast for a few months of the City of the Spider Queen adventure.
Mm.
And um, we wanted to actually get a good in-house playtest that kind of ran through it. Now, my problem was I was kind of way too familiar with the adventure uh, uh, because I was essentially developing it, adding extra material, and doing editing here and there. I kind of knew the adventure back and forward, so I had to pick a character that could play dumb. But everyone else picked all the fightery types, so I wound up having to play a spellcaster, and I wound up saying I'm going to play Ulwe Talos Spawn, the sorcerer. And Ulwe's gig is anything that could possibly be an electric power, I'm going to call an electric power. And I'm going to get through this adventure by being a dumb as bricks sorcerer who just lightning bolts everything. And we, even at a higher level, when I'm getting like the disintegrate spell, it's like the disintegrate spell is kind of like my incandescent lightning. It lightnings you so hard you disintegrate. And just, like anytime it's like, well, once you're your sorcerer and you have the disintegrate spell, you're not coming back to the barn with any of those slots left, right?
Right.
It's like, what's the last thing we do before we turn in for the night? Well, I disintegrate something because I got one of those left. we, we are going to use every one of these things before we go to bed tonight.
Because there's more tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So to tell a gaming story, we were fighting a just a horrible, like, maximum hit die iron golem that was just going to be forever to beat through the thing. And I said, you know what? I know we're kind of above the roof of a cavern. I'm just going to start disintegrating holes underneath its feet till I drill through to the top of the cavern and just drop this bastard 1,000 feet down in the Drow City underneath us. And it turned out the right answer was 4. It took 4 disintegrates to burrow through to the roof of the cavern and just drop them, 1,000 feet down, saying, "Well, bye bye. You're somebody else's problem now."
Yeah, I remember hearing stories about that character in the Wizards office, and I wasn't even playing in that game. So, weren't you at one point, like standing at the top of a crag, yelling why you haven't been made a god yet?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Look at the power I have.
Yeah, just play a completely irrational sorcerer, and you can actually play dumb through an adventure. It's like, which way do we go? I don't know. I'm railing at Telos. Why did you abandon me in this world of mortals? Do you not see my worth?
I don't think I've ever played a character that entertaining. But while you were talking, Rich, I had a couple of character moments pop into my head. One was Gamma World First Edition, which is still one of my near and dear RPGs to my heart.
Yeah.
The original Gamma World was just so weird and wacky and funny and deadly. It was amazing. Very, very much a product of Jim Ward's imagination that could only have come from him. But I was playing, I got to be a player in this one, and I remember I was rolling his stats, and out of the 6 stats, I think he got incredibly lucky, and the guy who was running the game was right there, so he saw these. I had like 3 18s and a 17. So, strength, dexterity, and constitution were all 18s. So I was looking, well, I decided to make him a mutated bear. And I took claws and, and everything. And he just mowed through things at a very enjoyable clip. And through the course of the adventures, he ended up possessing a full suit of powered armor. And I don't know how he fit into it, but we didn't worry about that back then. he so this physical whirlwind of claws and fur. The last thing he needed was a suit of power armor, but he got one. So he was always a lot of fun to play. And the other character moment that came to mind, Rich, while you were talking, was during a different Wizards of the Coast play test. I think you were running Return to the Tomb of Horrors for a third edition play test.
I did. Yep.
And after killing a couple of my monk characters, I decided to switch class to a druid. And we were inside the city, I think, by this point. And I had rationalized that my druid, there's nothing worse than the undead, because that's the ultimate perversion of nature. Life, death, rebirth, that's the way it is. Undeath, no, there's nothing more wrong than that. So that's why the druid was on this adventure. And we were getting to pretty high level, double digits. And I had access
I think I
to
remember
the
this story.
sunbeam spell. Oh, okay. It's to the sunbeam spell, which did like 6 dice of damage, to anybody. But I noticed it did 1d6 points of damage per caster level to undead. So my druid and me, I was just waiting to come up against a bunch of formidable undead to unleash this on. And I don't know if you remember it this way, Rich, or not, but the way I remember it is we entered a room and I believe had multiple liches in it. And there was one over there in the corner, and I picked that one. Okay, that's what I'm gonna. That's that's the one I'm gonna go after. And I think the way the spell was written, I could fire at the level I was at. I could fire one sunbeam around for every 3 levels of I had or something. So one casting of the spell got me 4 of those sunbeams, 1 per round. And I did, round after round, I just laid those into him. And I think he made his save every single time. But I still took great joy and pride in the fact that lich just turned and fled out of the room.
Yeah. He ran for his life. You're killing him.
Yeah. And I chased him. But you had him get away, if I recall.
There's so many things my mind is boggling at, but I think the first is a room full of liches. Was it like a lich convention? But it's
Well, first of all, I mean, blame Bruce Cordell, right? Because he wrote the Return to the Tomb of Horrors.
Bruce, I blame you.
I mean, now it is true that I took some liberties with that when I was kind of using, because this is a third edition playtest. This is pretty early on. I was running a home game while we were essentially playtesting, 3E, and I remember that I felt like I needed to change things up a little bit here and there, because there were going to be people who knew that adventure backwards and forwards,
Right.
and I needed to introduce some uncertainty. And I remember we got to this part where you actually go into the original Tomb of Horrors, which is famous for having the 3 entrances, right, and 2 of them lead to just
Right.
horrible traps. And I described to the party as I approached this hill, and I said, "You see before you 4 entrances into the mountain," and and all the players sat up and looked at each other and said, "Wait, there's supposed to be 3." I said, "You see 4 holes, 4 tunnels leading into the hill." Just a
Yeah, it was like, oh crap.
There's
We're gonna have to think about
there's
this.
no supposed to be. Hey, I want to say hi. Julia Martin has joined us in the chat. Hi, Julia. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Julia. How are you?
You know
Julia.
what? I'm going to take a break here because I would say Julia is one of the. There's a free newsletter for the show, which you can subscribe to, and 50 years in the dungeon.substack.com. And by being a free subscriber, I don't always finish. In fact, I very rarely finish the drawings over the course of our hour. But when I do finish it, the people who are subscribers get to see it for free. But there are paid levels where you get other bonuses. Julia, thank you, Julia, is one of our paid subscribers. Also, a, a great editor from TSR and Wizards of the Coast, who I hope I will be able to get on the show as we move a little later into the year run. So thanks for joining us, Julia. Anyway, enough of my plugging. Let's continue with the conversation because I love hearing about the room full of liches and other things. But one of the things that strikes me as you guys are talking about this is that was a big change when we moved out to Washington, because there was a lot more playtesting going on. In Lake Geneva, the schedule was such and everything was going that it's not that there wasn't any, but it wasn't as it wasn't stressed as much to make sure that we play test stuff. Was that your guys' experience too?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair to say. Uh, I mean, I can remember, doing, some pretty serious playtesting. Oh, like around the Birthright campaign setting.
Right. No, I'm
Um,
not trying to say there was
right,
no playtesting
right.
happening.
But or like, yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think it was the case that there were fewer office games happening at any given time in at TSR than there were um, at Wizards, and I remember like at Wizards, if you were any given weeknight, you would be walking if you stayed late, if you were walking around the office at 6:30 or 7 in the evening. There was a game going on in every conference room. It seemed right that
Right.
there were
Mhm.
any given weeknight there might have been 30 or 40 people scattered around the building that were in their various evening games. So it was definitely a bit of a cultural change. I think maybe it was that the building had better facilities for it, and it was easier for people to play there. Whereas back at TSR, people were playing in their living rooms and things, and that's always just a little more work to host. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, that's my feeling.
Yeah, I know that
Yeah,
when we got
and
out there, like I said, like you said, there was plenty of playtesting happening in Lake Geneva. It just wasn't. It wasn't stressed. Like it wasn't part of the process that got talked about. And I know when we got out to Washington, I remember there was a point where Tuesday afternoons was playtest afternoon, right? So we got it worked into everyone's schedule that you would have a 3 hour block of your work week, which is going to be doing some kind of playtesting that your group was working
mhm. Yeah, and also at that time period, Rich and you guys were working on a brand new edition of the game,
Oh
so
yeah.
there
on.
was a
Right.
lot more
Yeah.
there that you wanted to put through its paces, mechanics and so forth. So yeah, that was a huge effort that I was not involved in personally because it was like, no, thank you. uh, I told Bill Slavacek, who you had on a couple of weeks ago,
Mm.
Stan, he was going around, he's asking everyone in the department when, formal work on third edition was going to start. He asked me, Dale, do you want to work on third edition? And I said, well, if someone, chooses me, picks me, thinks I would be a valuable contributor to it, I'll work on it. Am I going to volunteer for it? No. But if somebody wants me to, I'd be happy to contribute my ideas. But no, I don't want to I knew that was going to be, it was going to be so much work and it was going to be so much stress. And the the people the team they assembled, Rich and Julia and Jonathan Tweet and Skip Williams and John Ratliff and all the other people who got involved in it, Ed Stark and everyone, did a tremendous job with that edition, and part of that was the degree of playtesting it was put through.
Well, thanks. It's still something that I kind of look back on and feel proud to have been a part of. And uh, yeah, it's fun to see some things that we did all the way back in the late '90s there when we were kind of running up to the but not the new edition are still in the game today.
Mhm.
That's kind of neat. I like to
Yeah,
tell
I was
people that
reading about that recently in your blog, Rich, where you were talking about some of that.
yeah, where the sorcerer
Where
came
is
from,
your
right?
blog, by the way?
Well, Rich's blog is
Yeah.
at, in this view, I can't pull it up. I only put it in this view. In we come back
Okay.
over here, and
Yeah.
where is it? Come
It's
on.
it should take over. It's Richard Baker
Yeah, it's
Richard Baker author.com.
richardbakerauthor.com. But I made a nice thing so we could put it on the screen.
That's all right.
Oh, I failed.
Rich has
What
a
a
blog.
bad host I am.
Yeah.
Oh wait, here we go.
Hey,
richardbakerauthor.com.
there it is. Thank you.
Tell you, this whole hosting and running the board and drawing, it's not as easy as I make it look. Yes, but you should definitely check out Rich's website. Jim Butler also in the house.
Hey,
Oh,
Jim.
wow.
He says, "Such a motley crew this is."
Yes, it is.
Thanks for dropping in, Jim. Always good to see you, Jim. You and Jim shared a cube in Lake Geneva, right, Rich?
Lake Geneva? No, we
You,
in
you and Jim
Lake
Butler?
Geneva. No, I was in Lake Geneva. I was in one of the kind of. We had really big cubes at
You had a
TSR. I don't know
really
why we had.
big block, and I thought it was you and Jim in there.
No, I had John Ratliff next door to me, but I was in like a high cube, so I essentially had my own little kind of windowless, dungeon cell to disappear into. But it was a big one at least. I had quite enough. I actually had enough space in my cube. I could put up a dartboard, a regulation length dartboard in my in my in my cube and throw darts in there if I wanted to.
You had to be careful when you were walking by his cube, though.
No, it was the one that had like the 7 foot tall walls. I mean, they were huge.
Jim says he was sandwiched between Bill and Karen. The agony. Oh, you know what? I'm not sure if it's a better or worse show for us just to talk about things that the audience doesn't know anything about because it's funny for us. But I like it, so we're gonna keep doing it. So, Rich, you've worked on a lot of different lines, and the you were the part of the design team on uh, Alternity and 3E, and early on
Yep.
in 4E, I think, right? Or
Yeah.
so. What do you? I don't know. What do you have anything brilliant that brings to mind?
Um, I will say, for 4E, I was part of the development team. I wasn't one of the three principal designers for 4E.
Right.
And I will say, I mean, I play a fair amount of 5E these days. I'm in a 5E game with, uh, amongst other people, Bill Slavacek and Ed Stark and Michelle Carter. That we are still getting together and playing every couple of weeks and playing some 5E. I will say that for as much as 4E is regarded by so many people as kind of the worst of the editions, man, there's some stuff from 4E that I really miss in 5E.
Yeah.
Like specifically, monsters in 4E were just so much more fun. They were the 5E monsters tend to be really kind of boring, and fights in 5E are a little worse for the fact that the monsters aren't doing interesting things.
Mhm.
So my 2 cents, man, I wish 5E had picked up more from 4E's monsters.
Yeah. Sorry, Dale. You go first. If you
Okay.
have anything to
I
add here.
was going to say, yeah, there's some brilliant design in fourth edition, and there's a guy who you guys may or may not know. He was in the industry. He was in the paper industry for a long time. He was in the computer game industry for a long time. He's in business for himself. Matt Colville.
Mm.
Sure, right, yep.
Yeah, he started a YouTube channel, did a did a Kickstarter, and now he's got his own company, MCDM, and he is a huge proponent of fourth edition. And he ran a live play for a fourth edition game for quite a long time for people who had never played fourth edition. These were all people who had come into the game through the current edition 5e. And with his company, his most recent products were a new monster book for 5e and another supplemental book where some of the broad concepts of monsters being fun to run that were present in 4e, taking some of those concepts and putting them through his brain and the brains of his team and his freelancers and everything. And the book's called Flea Mortals. And if you want
Nice.
to bring some of that 4e monster fun into your 5e game, Flea Mortals is the one to do it. MCDM. I'm sure everyone here knows the internet. They can find it. But I've picked up everything he's done, and it's improved. It fills in a lot of the holes. Not that there are holes, but it's it rounds out the 5e for me, because of course, like Rich and like you, Stan, and like probably some of the people watching this, we go back through so many editions. If we were in our house games, we're probably running some weird amalgam of stuff we like from second edition, stuff we like from third,
Yeah.
stuff we like from fourth, and then we're mixing all that in with the core of 5e. And that's why I like these tabletop games so much, because you can do that.
Yeah, I'll say that I'm trying to approach this from the positive side, not the negative side. 4E was not my cup of tea, but there were a lot of really good ideas in it. But one of the things I like best about 5E is that it's so open to that. Right? I think that the thing you liked about a previous edition is in there at least enough that you can turn the volume up on it and pick up the things you like that aren't there and drop them in, and they'll probably fit with only a little bit of tinkering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very clean design.
Yeah.
That makes modifications and additions and stuff like that very simple to do and easy to run.
Yeah. Now for me, I didn't run any 4E, and that certainly colors my opinion of it. And I think that I've always thought that the monster design, as Rich was saying, was one of the best things, but I didn't interact with that much. I just kind of in an intellectual way. So as a player, I did not find it my cup of tea, but I totally can understand why, as a DM, that you might look at that as one of the high water marks for the game.
And the 4E Dungeon Master's Guide was absolutely brilliant. I think that was James Wyatt who put that together. I could be wrong. Right. I apologize if I did get it wrong. But
right, so Kevin Melka is now in the room, also another former, and it seems like a good time to re-ask Jim's or Rich's question from earlier, because we got Julia and Jim and Kevin here, all of whom may know the Githyanki here on the cover of the Fiend Folio. What's up with those elbows? What the heck are those? Rich asked earlier, thinking that as the artist I would know. I was like, I don't know. I'm just drawing what I see. If you guys
It's been
know,
bugging me for 40 years, man. I mean, 40 years I've been wondering about these things.
If you guys know, put that in. That's a Harold question, says Kevin. Well, you know what? I'd been reaching out. I just heard from Harold today, so I think I'm going to be able to get him on as a guest sometime in the coming month or so, which I'm very excited about. Harold Johnson is who we're talking about there. Julia says,
Boy, somebody I haven't seen in a long time.
complex feelings about 4E, and I think that that's me too. I don't like to. I mean, when asked, I certainly will say what that it wasn't my favorite, but I don't like to run it down because while it's not my favorite, I think it's a really nifty design all around. It's just
Mhm.
not what I wanted in my D&D
Turns out there are a lot of people felt that way,
game.
including paying
Yeah.
customers. we we performed the experiment
Right.
with me and Steve Schubert and Dave Noonan. After we'd parted ways with Woods of the Coast, we went into business together and created our own little Sasquatch game studio. And we produced our game Primeval Thule setting, in which we created adaptations for several editions of the game, including um, Pathfinder, including um, 13th Age, which is kind of new around that time,
Mm.
and also 4E. We were the guys who went to the trouble of actually using the fourth edition, game system license, which Wizards attorneys had kind of made really difficult and unfriendly to use. But we did the work. We said, screw it. We think that Wizards is leaving customers behind by dropping out of 4E, and we think we can maybe we can serve those guys, kind of like in a way Pathfinder sort of scooped up, some customers that WotC left when they went from 3E to 4. Maybe we can do this here, and we sold like 17 of them. We did all that damn work of creating like a whole nother freaking
Yeah.
edition for 4E, and it wasn't like 17, but it was only about 100. It was not worth the amount of time, effort, and work we went to in creating an alternate edition of that game.
But
And
those
which is a shame
17
because
people were
I
very
liked
nifty.
4E Thule a lot. It actually really worked well. Nobody wanted it though. So what are
Yeah.
you going to do?
It's
You
tough.
sold tens of copies. Come on.
And you
Yeah,
you
we
are
sold a
their
The-
lot more than
favorite
5E
person.
Thules,
Those
So
those 4E fans. They like you
yeah.
better than anyone.
Now, personally, though, Rich, I loved Primeval Thule. So
Oh, thank you.
thank you for doing that.
I'm actually going to be running a game of it this up. Yeah, a week after next. I'll be at a place called ScrumCon down in the DC area. And I'm going to run a Thule game.
Cool.
Yeah.
Um so we all went through the pain of separation with wizards. But we're also all past that now. It's been years. What, looking back, there are a number of years where if I had asked this question, if someone had asked me this question, the answer would have been kind of raw, just kind of what I look back at it and what I think of the whole experience of being on the D&D team, working on the game. But now, I know for me at least, things have evened out. I have a little more equanimical answer. What about you guys? Looking back on that part of your careers, what what do you take away from your time on D&D, and how does it how do you carry it forward with you?
I started to kind of talk about this earlier, but I felt like uh, I left a mark that people wound up getting a lot of enjoyment out of. I was kind of talking about like the sorcerer and other things like barbarian rage. Every
Mm.
time a barbarian in this great country of ours flies into a rage, that was my fault. Right? Every time a paladin smites evil, it's because of something I put in the game. The warlock character, right? Character class, right? That's so there's definitely stuff that I can sit there and look what's in the game now and say these things are in the game now because I laid the groundwork for that, a number of years ago, and yeah, I'm a little bit sad that it's not my day job anymore. I do like what I do, but there's no doubt that working every day on D&D in a office full of other people who had that as their primary passion and calling was really kind of special. And yeah, I do miss it to this day. Um, but I also feel like it was probably about, I didn't have many more mountains left to climb
Right.
there. So I think that it was maybe, in a way, kind of good for me that Wizards of the Coast one day decided they could no longer afford to retain my services. So, it made me grow and do other new things, and I can't complain about where I am now. And I know that the things I put in the game are still in there now, and people enjoy them. So overall, yeah, a little equanimity, still a little regret, but mostly I look back on it and I remember the good times, not the bad times.
Mhm. Yeah, everything you said, Rich. Yeah, it was an amazing time for me with amazing people doing. I couldn't imagine I was getting paid to do this stuff. And the friends I made, the skills I acquired. You know, I'm going to be friends with you guys for as long as I'm around, and you know, I'm still earning a living on editing skills and language skills that I learned at TSR.
Right.
So, I can't fault that. So I can't fault it for that at all. Is there a little bit of melancholy that time didn't last longer? Yeah, of course. Because would I want to come to work every day with Rich and Stan and Julia and Kevin and Jim
Uh,
and Steven and Bill and Michelle and everybody and Ed and everybody else who worked at TSR or at Wizards? Yeah, that was like a very cool place to work. But yeah, you move. I made my contributions. I hope I entertained some people, made their games a little bit better, and that's good enough.
so we got a couple of answers here. Julia says, it's running along there, but she says, I think the elbow things are fungi. I thought Githyanki were some weird living, partially decayed, living mummy type beings. So there's that. Dave Lemon in the chat says it says they like to collect trinkets from their defeated foes and incorporate them into their complex armor, and I think that shows up in the what's going on the chest and the belt and all. I don't think I don't think these elbow nodules, unless they're cutting off someone's ear and working them into their elbows. I don't know.
I mean, are they elbow pouches? I don't know.
So hard to tell.
So where you put your keys? I don't know. Doesn't seem practical, but what do I know?
It's a strange world in D&D world. There aren't a lot of pockets. These things don't come with a lot of pockets.
The pocket's going to be invented for 2 editions yet, so.
So I started before I brought you guys on. I had mentioned the fact that Jim Ward had passed away. That the chat has talked a little bit about him. Uh, um, you guys both worked with him. Do you have a Jim Ward story, or I mean, I don't want. I really. I mean, this is a very personal thing. It was I was talking with someone else the other day. I was like, I if you didn't know him, I don't. There's some stories I don't want to tell you. You've got to see them through the Jim lens. But I think Skip put it really well. I'm sorry, I'm asking you a question, not letting you answer. But Skip put it really well. That he's a complicated guy, but he was always, you were his people, and he was always there for you. He had a strange way of showing it sometimes, but I have nothing bad to say about Jim. He never was anything but a supportive boss and a friend.
Yeah,
But
I certainly felt so too.
Go.
I will say Jim asked me the most unfair interview question I think I've ever gotten asked in my life, which is, uh, what is the absolute minimum you will accept in salary to come take this job? and I if I had been thinking, if I'd really been on my A game that day, I would have instantly come back with, well, what's the absolute most you're willing to pay me? But I wasn't really thinking, so I lowballed myself, because I really wanted the job. So I named a number that was sadly low, and I knew it was going to be a real stretch for me to even, have hot dogs and macaroni, to eat whatever I could manage on that salary. But I really wanted to come to Lake Geneva and take the job, so I named a pretty sad number. Um,
Is that what they offered you?
yes, and that's what I
Oh,
got. Yeah, I mean it wasn't epically sad because my standard was I'd been in the Navy, and I was an officer. But even so, back in the day, ensigns and Lieutenant JGs weren't making that much money, so it wasn't that much worse than what I was getting in the Navy at the time. But it was a paltry sum. And in fact, I wound up getting like a $4,000 raise just like 3 or 4 months later, because I think Mike Merton was looking at the numbers and said, "This is ridiculous. Pay this guy a little more."
if we want to hire him, we want to keep him. Let's pay him something.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think I had made his nose about, well, I can join the reserves and I'd get paid, more for taking the 2 weeks off every summer to go drill, and when I said I got to get permission to drill for, to just so I can make more money, and they're like, well, we'll just pay you more. That's fine.
How about you, Dale?
Uh, when I started on the magazine, Jim Ward was our publisher, but my boss and my editor was Roger, so I didn't have an awful lot of interactions with Jim Ward for the first few years that I was in the building. But I did learn a lot from him from the interactions that we did share, because he knew I was this dumb kid just out of school and with his first job, and I didn't know how anything worked. So he taught me a lot of things about how a business works, how TSR works, and just how to go about being a professional in the game industry. One little anecdote was, I think I had a vacation request, and I tracked him down in the hallway and asked him if he could sign it, and yeah, he signed it right there. And he asked me what I was going to do, and I tried to be funny and said some kind of line. Well, I'm going to go, uh, back home and be a geek with my old friends, my old gaming buddies and stuff.
Mm.
And he stopped me and he said, "Dale, you are not a geek. You are a professional, because you get paid for it now." And I said,
You're a
"All
professional.
right, thanks, Jim." I stood up a little bit straighter, and I walked back to my cube, having been called a professional by James M. Ward.
Julia brings up his day that will live in infamy parties.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yes, I'm sure we could all recite that story from memory.
Every year. So Jim, in his interview here, those who watch will remember, he mentioned that he worked there for a while and he got laid off. The story of how he got laid off, Jim, he referred to that day as the day that would live in infamy. And on the anniversary of that every year, he would throw a little party for the creative staff, uh, usually cookies or ice cream or something. And we had to listen to him tell the story. That was his reward. We got the ice cream. He got to tell his story.
Yeah, he'd always go to the pick and save that was down the hill behind the building, and get like cookies and ice cream and stuff like that on April the 4th, as I
Oh,
recall.
set the day. I know I've
I
got
think
it on my calendar still. People have seen my calendar and say, David, well, that's in December, isn't it? No, this is a different infamy. Did you guys play much with Jim?
Lunchtime games.
Mhm.
At least a few times. Gosh, trying to think of particular ones we would have done. I don't think it was ever in any of our Empires of the Middle Ages game. I don't think that was his thing.
Hmm.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah. I think I remember being in a blind diplomacy game with him at one point.
Oh my God! Holy
Yeah.
cats! I can tell you, I, I've lost enough friends over diplomacy that I would never, ever play it with my boss. That's getting fired. It's just waiting to happen.
It was lunchtime games. I remember after Space Hulk originally came out, Jim loved that game, but he refused to play as the Gene Stealers. He would only play as the Marines because he said there was no honor in winning the game as the Gene Stealers. And I do have one other lunchtime game Jim story.
Yeah.
We had gotten in a design from a freelance game designer, uh, well-established person. His name escapes me at the moment. I apologize. We eventually published it as the AD&D second edition trivia game.
Hmm.
That came in, and Jim Ward wanted to play it a few times, getting some play testing in. As I recall, he and a couple other recent hires, uh, Bill Connors and Timothy Brown. We were all hired within a couple of weeks of each other, so we kind of formed a little group there because we were the newbies together.
Right.
And there may have been other people at the table too, but those are the people that I remember. And I was very proud of the fact because I knew Jim wanted to play test this, and he was my boss. That I won that play test of the D&D of the AD&D trivia game.
Show off in front of your boss. See, I'm
Exactly.
a good.
See how much I know about this?
um. All right. Well, we've gone a little past the hour, which is our plan. But let's. I'm. I find doing the show that uh, we get to an hour, and I think, oh, we're just getting warmed up. But I don't want us to go too long. I do want us to spend a little time talking about the fact that this is the 50th anniversary of D&D, right? We all kind of started within the first 5 or 6 years. We've been playing this and working on it for most of its time. What? Oh, Kevin says Richard Borg did the trivia game.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Kevin.
that
I
sounds
couldn't remember if it was Borg or Berg, and I didn't want to guess wrong. So thank you.
um, what? Besides, oh my God, I'm old. What is it that this 50th anniversary makes you guys think of, or is there a perspective that comes with it? Is there just kind of a good chance to reminisce? What are you looking at here with the anniversary?
Um, I think the interesting thing from my point of view, because obviously I'm off working in the computer game biz these days with Elder Scrolls Online, uh, is how much you know a small hobby game that was originally printed in the hundreds of copies, in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, way back and whenever. Uh, how much that DNA has wound up being foundational to so much of uh, essentially any kind of fantasy gaming, fantasy or sci-fi gaming, even beyond the tabletop and in the computer game biz, right? That
Right.
you know, uh, of the hundreds of people that I work with, I bet you almost every one of them at some point or another has sat down and played D&D, right? So this is the the kind of assumptions, the viewpoints, the commonalities around a D&D table, those things have kind of spread out and colonized and are now kind of foundational to hobby gaming in general. At I mean, and to be honest, okay, even you look at something, let's say Magic the Gathering. Magic is not a D&D game, right? It's a collectible card game,
Mm,
but it's fantasy art and it's a fantasy setting at the get go, right? And they stayed pretty faithful to the fantasy gaming vibe and tropes for 20 years before they started kind of spreading out and doing more and different things with it in a lot of ways. So it's a fact that that, man, D&D has had a cultural influence. I think it's punched way above its weight
mm,
in how it's kind of changed uh, the things we see on TV and the things we see at the movie theaters and the games we play, uh, on our, both around our tabletops and, on our televisions and computers. And I think that's pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I would echo some of the things Rich just said. I feel very privileged to have been up a part of contributing to the legacy of this game over the last 50 years. And these days, I love games. I especially love tabletop role playing games.
Mm,
And I know the future of D&D and tabletop games in general could go in a few different directions in the near future, but I'm not going to speculate on that. I am just thrilled as a gamer to see the cultural impacts and so forth that Rich was alluding to, with not just D&D but all kinds of games,
right.
Elder Scrolls Online, Magic, the surge that all role playing games have been enjoying since the mass market success, pop culture success of Fifth Edition, being a great game and and having it be featured in Stranger Things and Critical Role and stuff like that. I'm At my base, I'm thrilled that so many people are discovering these games, and that in some small degree, hey, we were right. This is fun.
This is People should have been listening to us instead of slamming us into lockers. Not that we're bitter. You know what? That's something that I've been meaning to. Uh, well, I've been hoping would come up, and I figured that it just might not be until a little later in the year as we move on in the history of the game. But you bring up Critical Role and how much the start of YouTube of things, the ability to do shows like this, for one hand, but the live gaming where people can, it's no longer a mystery. I think for to my end, one of the things that always haunted D&D was no one understood it if they hadn't played it, and if you showed them a game, it looked like a textbook that they didn't want to read, and they thought, "There's no way I want to play this game." But if you see someone playing, if you people bring their spouses or family to conventions and they get into playing demos, that would convert them. These shows of people playing the game now serve that purpose for millions of people, and to my mind are really the key that unlocked this renaissance that we're having now. Is that people can understand it and know, oh, that looks like fun. Now I have a reason to wade into that 300 page uh, textbook. And I learned that, oh, I only need to know 10 pages of this. Oh, okay. Oh, this is great. I can
Mhm.
play. It's amazing to me, and I know I'm leaving. I'm not asking. I'm not making a statement that has a follow on for you guys. So I apologize that I'm just kind of editorializing. But
It's your page, man. You can do that.
yeah, I know. But you won't be here next week, and I can do this anytime. Um, do you think I'm on the right line with that, or what's your take on either that or what it is that's unlocked this renaissance of gaming in the public's mind.
I mean, I'll admit that I did not see it coming.
Ooh.
I really didn't. I was I hesitate to say dismissive, but perhaps uh, unimpressed by would maybe be a better way of saying it about folks putting their games on different sorts of streaming games, right? And
Right.
I just like who wants to watch other people play? I just didn't see the attraction. And hey, what do I know, right? Apparently apparently lots of people do.
Right. No,
I'm
I'm
also
with
the guy
you.
who decided we decided some more fourth edition tools, right? I mean, so
I mean, I
clearly
would
I
not
am
have
capable of
bet.
investigating the market.
Yeah, I would not have bet that the result would have been this, but I think, I mean, from my point of
Yeah,
view, it clearly is. And like you, I throw my hands up, and go, yeah, missed that call.
yeah, did not see that.
What about you, Dale? What
Oh, absolutely. As you were saying, Stan, you're trying to explain this weird concept of a game without a board, and it's in your head, and now you can just send them a YouTube link and go, "It's this."
right,
And yeah, so it's wonderful to see the burgeoning of D&D and the burgeoning of the hobby, thanks to the development of social media and streaming in particular. Yeah, I'm right with you guys. It was like, why do I want to watch other people play a game?
right.
Yeah,
Rather just play it.
yeah, exactly. But then, of course, someone much wiser than me said, "Well, you watch baseball and football, don't you?"
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'm watching other people play a game. Yeah, yeah. And even back at TSR, when I brought in at the time what was known as Pursue the Pennant became Dynasty League, is a
Right.
baseball
Right.
simulation board game. A good friend of ours, Bill Connors, that I mentioned earlier, uh, eventually got into playing Pursue the Pennant with us. You, Rich, you were playing. I Stan, I think you played. There was
I
a
played for a
lot of
while.
Pursue
Yeah.
the Pennant going on.
Yeah.
But I remember we were sitting at lunch with Bill one day, and we were playing a game. We were playing a game of Pursue the Pennant, and he confided in me. He said, "Dale, when you first brought this game in, I watched you explain it and play it with someone, and I just thought they're playing a game about playing a game. That's insane." But over the times of watching other people play it, he realized, well, yeah, this is a really good game, very well designed about playing a game.
Right.
So, and of course, video games, baseball games, football games, you're playing a video game about playing a sport. So, yeah. So I was completely wrong, just like you guys were about this. But once it was explained to me like that, I was like, okay, yeah, okay, I can sort of see that now. I understand that there are people who come up to conventions, who go to conventions now and come up to the retail booths of role playing game companies and say, "Hi, I love role playing. How do I do it?"
Yeah.
Yeah, because they've seen it online, but they don't know anyone who runs a game in person, or so having all this social media, it really serves a lot of the same uh, areas that Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Adventures used, and all the other gaming magazines
Right.
used to solve, used to provide. It's more ideas, and well, how do you handle this, and oh, I need some new monsters and stuff like that. And yeah, it's too bad that those magazines went away. Those were a lot of fun to work on. And I always looked forward to getting the Dragon magazine in the mail because it was a fresh dose of D&D.
Right. But now you can
Now
log
with
on and
streaming,
see it every day. There's new things to read online.
yep,
I
yeah,
miss the magazines too. I like maybe I should pull a special episode of this. Or pull all the magazine people, and we can make that the focus of the conversation.
that'd be great.
All right. Well, I'm gonna pause my drawing here. This is as far as I've gotten in an hour on doing an homage to this guy here. It's turned out pretty good.
Yeah, that's amazing, Stan. Some of the all the detail on the chest and stuff.
I'm going for those watching. I'm going to finish this off screen, and I'm going to make it available. I will give you some details about that after I get these guys off screen. I'm going to come over here and hit this button. Just us again. Thank you guys for coming. We're going on pretty close to an hour and a half now, and I think again we could keep going for another hour and a half, but you know it's later on the East Coast, and also I'm getting a little hungry too, so we'll wrap it up. Thank you, Rich Baker, who, if you're looking for him online, richardbakerauthor.com is the best place to find him. Rich, you're working at Cinemax. Anything you want to promote, either personally or the other job?
Hey, we're coming up on our Gold Road chapter. We'll be releasing in a couple months,
Yeah.
and I did pretty much the main story. I was a writer for that, and I think there's some pretty solid writing in there. So play
you
Gold Road and have fun enjoying the main story.
Are you working on any fiction these days? I know we didn't talk about that much, but
I do have a couple of books. My being shopped around by my agent. It's been pretty quiet so far. I'm beginning to know despair,
yeah,
but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It's a strange business.
I'm sorry I laughed at the beginning, but Dave Lemon put in the chat. He said, "Lovely elbow thingies."
Whatever they are, yes.
Whatever they are, they look nice. Dale, uh, your microphone. Anything you want to share with the world? Make sure they see.
Well, there is a friend of mine who has a campaign on Kickstarter live right now for Tales from the Terror Tomb.
Tales
It's a
from the Terror Tomb, like TOMB.
TOMB. Yes,
Okay.
it's a role-playing game about drawing inspiration from the 50s EC comic books, campy sci-fi movies, bad Italian zombie movies, campy horror. It's live on Kickstarter right now. It's using Lester Smith's D6 by D6
Uh-huh.
RPG engine, and this Kickstarter will has the rules and then this setting that I'm hoping to be involved with as it develops. But if anybody wants to look that up, it's Tales from the Terror
Yep.
Tomb
Jim
on
has
Kickstarter.
Jim has written it mostly correctly, and there. Yeah. All right. Do you know, is that going to be running for another couple of weeks, or?
Yes, I think it's only been running for about a week or so. So yeah, there's still plenty of time to get on board.
All right. So probably until mid-April. Don't waste your time. Go now. Go look it up. Tales from the Terror Tomb.
Yes,
Right,
thank you, Jim.
Uh,
Yes.
you guys hold on a sec. After I do some outro, we can still chat for a minute or two. But I'm going to say thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I hope that I will be able to have both of you back on. Rich, we can certainly talk more about fiction and the minis angle, which we didn't bring up at all. And Dale, that magazine round table sounds great. I think that we'll do something like that.
That would be awesome.
Maybe more.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So just me again. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Certainly thank my guests, Richard Baker and Dale Donovan. As I said earlier, there is a free newsletter for this show called 50 Years in the Dungeon.substack.com, or that's the URL. You go over there, sign up for free. You'll get the art sent to your email box. You'll have other bits of information, background material sent to your email box, and you'll find out who the guests are ahead of time. Stuff like that, fun stuff. And if you want to consider becoming a paying member, we have other things like the process videos where you can watch the entire piece of art come together over the 30 seconds to a minute in a little video. Also, I'm selling art prints of these homages that are only available to people who are members. It's free members is what unlocks your ability to purchase these. Being paying members, you would get a discount on any of those purchases you wanted to make. So please check it out. Even if it is the free version, which is what I mostly recommend, you signing up for the free version is helpful for me. It helps to spread the word about the show, and I want people to know we're having fun here. So other than that, I'm going to say goodnight to everyone. Thank you for joining us in another episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon. I'll be back next week, and I'm not sure who my guest is, but it's certain to be someone fun. So come on back and check it out. Until then, roll for initiative.